The air was thick with the musty smell of decay as I ran through the dark corridors of the dilapidated building. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath came in ragged gasps as I desperately tried to escape the horrific creature that pursued me. Its presence was palpable, a malevolent force that seemed to emanate from every corner of the maze-like structure. The building seemed to defy logic, its walls shifting and changing configuration as if taunting me, making it impossible to find a way out. The once familiar hallways now twisted and turned in disorienting angles, and doors that were once open now led to dead ends or disappeared altogether. It was as if the building itself was alive, a living, breathing nightmare that fed on my fear. I had stumbled upon this abandoned building by chance, drawn to it by rumors of strange occurrences and supernatural phenomena. But nothing could have prepared me for the horrors that awaited me inside. I had entered with a sense of curiosity, but now I was trapped, pursued by a creature that defied description. It had first appeared as a shadowy figure, flickering in and out of existence like a mirage. Its form constantly shifted, morphing from one monstrous shape to another, always staying one step ahead of me. It seemed to take delight in toying with me, its malicious presence taunting me from the darkness, whispering eerie incantations that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to rationalize my situation, telling myself that it was all just a nightmare, a figment of my imagination. But the bruises and cuts that adorned my body were all too real, a testament to the creature's relentless pursuit. Every time I thought I had found an escape route, the walls would shift, trapping me in a dead end or leading me in circles, mocking my futile attempts to flee. My sanity began to unravel as I struggled to keep my bearings in the ever-changing labyrinth. I lost track of time, my days blending into nights, and my mind becoming increasingly clouded with fear and exhaustion. Sleep eluded me, as the creature's presence seemed to intensify when I closed my eyes, its haunting whispers echoing in my ears. I tried to communicate with the outside world, but my phone was useless, unable to establish a signal within the building's walls. The few messages I managed to send were met with disbelief or dismissed as a prank, leaving me feeling even more isolated and alone. It was as if the building had swallowed me whole, cutting me off from the outside world, and trapping me in its endless maze. I scavenged for food and water, subsisting on meager rations I found in forgotten rooms and abandoned storage areas. The once grand building was now a decaying husk, filled with broken furniture, peeling wallpaper, and the stench of decay. But it was the creature that haunted me the most, its presence a constant reminder of the nightmare I was trapped in. As my physical strength waned, so did my resolve. I found myself succumbing to the creature's taunts, its voice echoing in my head, urging me to give up, to accept my fate. But I refused to surrender, fueled by a primal instinct to survive, even as my mind frayed at the edges. One day, as I stumbled through the dark corridors, weak and disoriented, I felt a sudden shift in the building's walls. A previously blocked door now stood open, beckoning me with a faint light from the other side. Desperate for escape, I stumbled towards it, hoping that it would lead me to freedom. But as I stepped through the threshold, I was greeted by a sight that froze me in my tracks. The walls of the room were adorned with grotesque paintings, depicting scenes of horror and despair. The once familiar room now seemed to be alive, pulsating with an otherworldly energy that sent chills down my spine. I tried to turn back, but the door had disappeared, leaving me trapped in the nightmarish chamber. I felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere, as if the air itself had thickened with malevolence. The temperature dropped, and an eerie silence settled over the room. I knew that the creature was near, lurking in the shadows, watching me with its unblinking eyes. Panic seized me as I frantically searched for an exit. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the room itself seemed to twist and shift, as if alive with a sinister intent. Desperation clouded my mind as I realized that there was no way out. I was trapped, cornered by an unseen force that was beyond my comprehension. The creature's presence grew more palpable, its whispers now a cacophony of voices, chanting in ancient languages that made my blood run cold. I covered my ears, trying to block out the maddening sound, but it only grew louder, penetrating every fiber of my being. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by fear and despair, my sanity unraveling with each passing moment. And then, it appeared before me, taking on a form that I could barely comprehend. It was a grotesque fusion of nightmarish creatures, with multiple limbs, gaping maws, and eyes that glowed with an unholy light. Its stench was putrid, a nauseating mix of decay and malevolence. I tried to move, to run, but my body refused to obey. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to tear my gaze away from the abomination before me. It approached me slowly, its form shifting and changing with each step, taunting me with its impossible existence. As it drew closer, its voices grew louder, filling my mind with incomprehensible whispers that threatened to drive me mad. I screamed, a primal scream born out of pure terror, but it only seemed to amuse the creature. It reached out with its twisted limbs, its claws inches away from my face. In one last desperate attempt to survive, I summoned every ounce of strength and willpower I had left. I forced my body to move, to lunge forward, and with a burst of adrenaline-fueled speed, I managed to slip past the creature and dash towards a narrow opening in the wall. The walls shifted and closed in behind me, but I squeezed through the tight gap, ignoring the pain and scraping against my skin. I stumbled out into another corridor, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But I was not out of danger yet. The building seemed to have come alive, its walls shifting and changing configuration in a frenzied dance, as if trying to prevent my escape. I ran blindly, taking turns at random, hoping against hope that I would find a way out. The creature pursued me relentlessly, its monstrous form shifting and warping, always a step behind me. I felt my body giving out, my muscles screaming with exhaustion, but I refused to stop. I knew that if I faltered for even a moment, the creature would catch up to me, and my fate would be sealed. The building seemed to be playing tricks on me, leading me in circles, dead ends, and false exits, but I pushed on, driven by sheer survival instinct. And then I saw it, a faint glimmer of daylight at the end of a long corridor. With renewed determination, I sprinted towards it, ignoring the burning pain in my chest and the protesting muscles in my legs. I could hear the creature's monstrous footsteps growing louder behind me, its breath hot on my neck. I refused to look back, knowing that it would only slow me down. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, and the glimmer of daylight felt impossibly far away. But I pushed on, my mind foggy with exhaustion and fear. As I neared the end of the corridor, the walls began to shift and twist, closing in on me from all sides. The ceiling lowered, threatening to crush me, while the floor shifted under my feet, causing me to stumble and lose my balance. I desperately crawled, using every ounce of strength to make it to the end. With a burst of adrenaline, I reached the end of the corridor and burst out into the daylight. The brightness blinded me for a moment, but I stumbled forward, driven by the hope of escape. I found myself in a courtyard, surrounded by walls that seemed to be shifting and pulsating, as if alive. I could hear the creature's roars of frustration behind me as it tried to follow me into the daylight. I ran towards a large gate that stood at the far end of the courtyard, my legs threatening to give out at any moment. I reached the gate and pushed against it with all my remaining strength, but it refused to budge. Panic rose within me as I realized that I was trapped once again. The courtyard seemed to close in on me, its walls shifting and closing the gap between me and the gate. The creature was getting closer, its monstrous form looming over me, its breath hot on my neck. I looked around desperately for another way out, but the walls of the courtyard were now impossibly high, with no visible exits. The creature's laughter echoed in my ears as it closed in on me, its twisted form morphing and changing with each step. I was out of options, my fate seemingly sealed. Just as the creature was about to reach me, a sudden surge of anger and defiance rose within me. I refused to be its prey any longer. With a scream, I charged towards the creature, fueled by a surge of adrenaline and desperation. The creature was taken aback by my sudden attack, and for a moment, I managed to evade its grasping claws. I dodged and weaved, my movements fueled by sheer instinct, as I desperately tried to find a weak spot in its monstrous form. But the creature was relentless, its shape-shifting abilities making it almost impossible to land a decisive blow. Its multiple limbs and gaping maws snapped at me from all directions, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. We circled each other in the courtyard, locked in a deadly dance of predator and prey. The walls continued to close in, the courtyard now a maze of shifting walls and traps. I knew that I had to find a way to defeat the creature, or I would be lost forever in this nightmare. With a surge of determination, I charged towards the creature once again, dodging its claws and biting teeth. I grabbed a broken piece of wood that lay on the ground, using it as a makeshift weapon. I swung with all my strength, aiming for the creature's eyes. My makeshift weapon connected, and the creature screeched in pain, momentarily stunned. I seized the opportunity and plunged the broken wood into one of its eyes, causing it to shriek in agony. But the creature was far from defeated. It retaliated with renewed ferocity, its attacks coming faster and stronger. I ducked and weaved, narrowly avoiding its lethal claws and teeth. But I was growing weaker, my body battered and bruised from the relentless pursuit. In a desperate move, I lunged towards a shifting wall and used it to vault over the creature. I landed on the other side of the shifting wall, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked back to see the creature thrashing and snarling, unable to pass through the wall. I had bought myself a precious moment of respite, but my relief was short-lived. As I turned to continue my escape, I found myself face to face with another monstrous creature. It was different from the one that had been chasing me, but equally terrifying. Its form was a grotesque amalgamation of flesh, bone, and tentacles, pulsating and shifting with an otherworldly energy. I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling with horror. The maze-like building seemed to have transformed once again, trapping me in an ever-changing nightmare. The walls shifted and twisted, closing in on me from all sides, while the creatures closed in with relentless determination. I sprinted down a narrow corridor, my heart pounding in my ears. I could hear the creature's footsteps and monstrous roars echoing behind me, urging me to run faster. But the maze seemed to be alive, shifting and changing its configuration with each step I took. I turned a corner, only to find myself face to face with a dead end. Panic surged within me as I realized I was trapped. The walls closed in on me, crushing me from all sides. I could feel the pressure on my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I desperately tried to find a way out, feeling the walls pressing against my body, threatening to crush me to death. The creatures were getting closer, their monstrous forms looming over me with hungry anticipation. I could see their twisted faces and gaping maws, their eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. In a last-ditch effort, I pushed against the walls with all my strength, trying to create enough space to slip through. My body ached with exhaustion, my vision blurred, but I refused to give up. With a surge of adrenaline, I squeezed through a narrow gap just as the walls closed in completely, trapping one of the creatures on the other side. But as I stumbled forward, I realized I had emerged into a pitch-black room. The air was stale and heavy, and the temperature dropped suddenly, sending shivers down my spine. I fumbled in the darkness, trying to find a way out, but the walls seemed to have shifted again, trapping me in this dark, suffocating space. I could hear the creature's growls and snarls echoing in the darkness, its tentacles slithering towards me with unnatural speed. I knew I had to find a way out, and fast. I felt my way around the room, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming out in panicked gasps. As I stumbled forward, my hand brushed against something cold and metallic. I felt around, realizing it was a doorknob. With a surge of hope, I turned it and pushed the door open, stepping into another room. But this room was different. It was filled with mirrors, reflecting my own terrified face back at me from all angles. I could see my own fear-stricken eyes, my sweat-soaked hair clinging to my face. But in the midst of my own reflection, I saw something else. A faint, distorted figure lurked in the mirrors, moving with unnatural grace and speed. I could see its twisted form, its tentacles reaching out towards me with a malevolent intent. It was the creature, but its form was ever-changing, shifting and distorting in the reflections. I stumbled back, my mind spinning with horror. The maze-like building seemed to be playing tricks on me, taunting me with its shifting walls and terrifying creatures. I realized that escape was impossible, that I was trapped in this nightmare forever.